Good evening, and welcome to my Airbnb somewhere in the Alachua Forest. So, I think I mentioned this before, probably in the chat, but I'm in Gainesville for the Gators versus Miami Hurricanes game tomorrow. So, I want to get somewhere kind of away from everything. So, I'm staying in the Alachua Forest. So, I'll show you a tiny house. I was just staying in a small little tiny house. That's what it looks like. You can see that. Very, not super big. Just a tiny house in the middle of the forest. So, yeah, pretty cool. Very happy with it. Very quiet, nice place to unwind and focus. So, don't know how many of these we'll get. It's already pretty late at night on a Friday night. Been out, so as I guess one does before a college football game. And then tomorrow I'll be out for the game. Game's at 3:30, so we'll see. I'm hoping it's Labor Day weekend. Season starts on Thursday. Hopefully we get through all of them. We've been through 5, so I think we're almost halfway there at least. So here's number 6. So we are doing Patrick. So Patrick started off 3rd overall. Bijan Robinson. Man, 2 years in a row you've gone Bijan. All right, well, spent the most money of anyone on any one player, $80 on Bijan Robinson. So what do we like? Well, Bijan Robinson's rookie season was kind of a mixed bag. He was the number 9 overall fantasy running back. Not great for where we picked him up to be a top 5 fantasy running back. He was, let's see. Yeah, he had limited rushing contributions. He was 15th or lower in carries, yards, and touchdowns, but he was really good as a receiver. He's top 5 in routes, targets, yards, and touchdowns. So, I mean, he's tremendously efficient as a receiver. Not great as a runner, but he didn't get a lot of opportunity. The thing with Bijan is Tyler Algier has a 1,000-yard season in the NFL going on 2 years ago now. So, and he's his backup. He's still a good player. We're hoping now that freaking Arthur Smith is gone. He is now on the Steelers. We don't need to talk about that. But Arthur Smith, the head coach, who's the play caller, is gone. We've replaced him with Zach Robinson, another Sean McVay disciple. Raheem Morris is the former Rams defensive coordinator, former Bucks head coach, is now the new Atlanta Falcons head coach. I would have hired Belichick, but hey, what do I know? Greatest defensive mind ever, and we just ignore him for Raheem Morris, a retread coach who failed with Josh Freeman. Sure. I'm hoping Robinson, I guess the hope is Robinson uses Robinson the same way that McVay uses Kieran Williams, the same way McVay used Todd Gurley. Just, he's the most talented player on the offense. We're going to just unleash him, let him go. Robinson is probably the most talented running back this side of Saquon Barkley. He's just so elusive, so slippery. He has great vision. He does everything well. He's a complete running back. So it's just really a matter of, not even for me, of like how good is he, how efficient he is. It's just how much volume are you going to give him? I mean, if you gave Bijan Robinson Rachaad White volume, he'd probably do Christian McCaffrey numbers based just on the efficiency numbers. But how much are you going to feed him, especially when you got Tyler Algier there? I don't know. I do not know. I respect doubling down and going after him again. So, hey, nothing wrong with that. I don't know if he disappointed you last year. For me, it was an underwhelming season considering my high hopes for him. But he still had a very good season. And at one of these years, he's going to be the best fantasy player in football. I don't know when it'll happen. It could be this year. But when someone actually figures out how to use him properly, he'll have an incredible breakneck season. It's just a matter of, is this the season? I don't know. 8 overall. Spent $57 on Jamar Chase. Considering I spent $57 on A.J. Brown, yeah, I think Chase was a That's a good price. Now, the worry is two things. One, Joe Burrow is coming off a wrist injury that no football player quarterback has ever come off of. Two, Chase is looking for a new contract. Unlike CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk, he is not going into the last year of his rookie deal. He's going into his fourth year of his rookie deal, and as a first round pick, he has a fifth year. So doesn't have a whole lot of leverage right now. The same way the Bengals just franchise tagged T. Higgins for his fifth year. I mean, they could draw it out with Jamar Chase. Historically, Bengals don't give out a lot of guaranteed money. They did give out a lot of guaranteed money to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's a quarterback, so quarterbacks get quarterback money. I don't know if Jamar Chase is going to get wide receiver Justin Jefferson money, even if I think he deserves it. So right now, he's at practice, but he's not really practicing. I don't know. I think he will play. The competitor in him tells me he will play. Brandon Ayuk got a new deal. CeeDee Lamb got a new deal. I don't think Jamar Chase will get a new deal this year. I don't like the Bengals playing chicken with him, but they always are playing chicken with every quarterback or every running back or every player, really. They're just tough negotiations are had with all of Bengals management every single time a star player comes up. So, I mean, this is what happened with Carson Palmer. This is what happened with Chad Ochocinco. This is what happened with TJ Houshmandzadeh. This is what happened with Boomer Esiason. The list just goes on and on. So what happened with Chris Henry. So what happened with Joe Mixon, Andrew Whitworth. I could give you a book of players. So point is, I don't know if Chase is going to play week 1. I think he will. Doesn't have much leverage, but he's trying to double down. So 2 years ago, he was the wide receiver 3 when he was averaging 20 points per game. Last year, he was the wide receiver 11 when he was averaging only 16 points a game. Again, the big outlier is Joe Burrow missed most of the season, so he was great when Burrow played. He was not as great when Burrow was gone, but Burrow is back. How's the wrist injury affect him? We don't know. But to be honest, I think 57 for Chase is a good deal. I mean, you're paying for him essentially at cost. I have him as like a $65 player. So I think he's a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. I think he's going to play. I think when he plays, he's going to do well. Jamar Chase is genuinely excellent, and I think that he's an all-world talent at receiver. And if he plays, then he's going to be great. So I don't mind the cost. I mean, we're getting 2 superstar players. These are superstars. So Jamar Chase and Bijan Robinson have the ability to possibly go win you fantasy titles. So nothing wrong with that. It's a lot of money to spend on 2 freaking players, $137, but if you're going to do it, hey, at least do it on good superstar talent. 30th overall, $19. So we went away from, like, if Sarah's doing 0 RB, and most other teams, like, we'll say like Justin's doing hero RB, and Stefan's kind of doing hero RB, whereas Ryan's doing, like, basically classic RB with 2 RBs, but no handcuffs, and then Max just, like, heavy on RBs. You're kind of going classic, but we'll get there. So $19 Ramondre Stevenson. So you spent $137 at this point. You're like, I see the running backs. I don't want to have to fight for running backs. I'm going to fill the hole now. So things we like about Ramondre, things we don't like. Things we don't like. He was the 36th running back in football last year. It's not great. He was not that great. I mean, he averaged 12 fantasy points a game, but 36 is a pretty low number. It's not super what we want. Now, granted, excuse me, he missed 5 games, so he missed a good chunk of the season. And when he was playing, he was having to share the workload with Ezekiel Elliott, who is now gone. So we've brought in Antonio Gibson. I think Lauren picked up Antonio Gibson. I mean, good for her. She needs running backs. But Gibson will get some of the passing game work, but I think Ramondre Stevenson's probably the most talented player on that offense. I mean, the only other guy I think that can rival him is maybe, I mean, we'll take Drake May, the rookie quarterback, out of it because we don't really know as of yet. He's very young, unlike Bo Nix, who started for 5 years, and Jay Daniels, who started for 4.5 years, and Caleb Williams, who started for like two. Yeah, him and Drake May basically started for like 2 years. Drake May is only 21, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix are like 24, and Caleb Williams is 21 too. So he's on the younger side. Um, I think, yeah, Ramondre is probably the most talented. This has got to be the most talented offensive player at this point in time on that offense. So I think he will be the featured back. I think he will get a lot of touches. It's just a matter of how much, how good are the Patriots going to be? Because, I mean, Ramondre will catch the ball somewhat. I mean, 3 or 4 catches a game, but he's not the catching back. So it's really like, how much work will he get when the Patriots are not good? I think their over-under for the season's like 4.5. So, like, if you think they're going to win 5 games, then you take the over. I think they'll be quietly better than that. Their defense is good enough to do it by themselves. But still, it's not great for a running back who strictly runs the ball a lot. I'm thinking like he'll be healthy this year, so we'll give him 850 yards. We'll give him like six touchdowns, maybe 40 receptions or so. So that's in and of itself a top 20 receiver. I think he has more upside than a couple of max guys he took, which were Jerome Ford and James Conner. So I'll give you that. He's still very young. He's really, really talented. He's just kind of stuck in a bad situation with a bad offensive line and a defensive head coach. So maybe he'll get fed, but realistically, the only way he's putting up big numbers is he's getting fed a lot. And I don't know if he's going to get fed a lot. But we'll see. He'll at least be healthy this year, hopefully. So it's a good deal. That's a deal. I think, yeah, Connor went for 27. Jerome Ford went for 9. Ramondre went for 19. So right in between the two. 32, so 2 picks later, I remember I nominated him thinking Andre it was Andre's handcuff and it wasn't, it was Patrick's. $5, Tyler Algier. I already mentioned Algier. He kind of steals touches away from Bijan. We don't like that. We're not a fan of it. Especially because he was the red zone vulture, just vulturing goal line touches from Bijan, and it was just really, really annoying. But we're hoping we can fully focus on Bijan this year, especially with the new offensive coordinator. I think we will feature Bijan more. I think we'll get less Algier. I think Algier will still get his. He'll still get like 500 yards, 6 touchdowns or so, maybe like 20 receptions. But it won't be as prevalent as him like stealing, basically like getting almost 200 carries, which is, I think he got 184 last year plus 18 catches. So that's over 200 touches. And while I think he's a good player, I think Bijan is an incredible player. And I think the incredible player ought to get more touches than be in a 50-50 timeshare with the merely good player. Realistically, they should have just traded Algier and gotten a worse backup, if I'm being honest. But hey, they're both cheap, so Atlanta's always kind of doing strange, weird things. We'll skip the defensive players, which you took trying to like just fill out the roster. At 76 overall, you took Jermaine Burton, the rookie 3rd-round pick. You're kind of handcuffing Jamar Chase, which is interesting. I mean, you got Burton for $3, so I can't hate it too much. Yeah, he runs a 4.45 40, so he's reasonably fast. Tyler Boyd is gone. I don't know if Burton is the number 3 receiver, if I'm being honest, though. I think Andre Iosivas is the number 3. So there's the possibility Burton develops into a very good player. Realistically, you would only play him, I guess, if Chase doesn't play. I still would prefer Iosivas, but there's a possibility down the road late in the season that Burton overtakes Iacevas for the slot receiver role. So for now, we'll say like 30 receptions, 300 yards, a couple touchdowns. He's a good player. I like him, but it's a deep receiver room, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then whoever. I mean, I guess the slot receiver. I mean, for years was Tyler Boyd, but Tyler Boyd was never really usable unless somebody was hurt. So if Chase is out, I think Iacevas would be the play. But if Burton overtakes him, then yeah, he'll get some play. But I guess you're just trying to make sure you cover your bases in case Chase misses games. 101, $4, DeAndre Hopkins. I was actually looking at this. I don't know why I didn't bid more money on getting Hopkins, to be honest with you. There was something going on. People don't remember how dominant he was in Houston or how dominant he was in Arizona. I mean, even last year, he was still a top 20 fantasy receiver. So I don't know why he went for $4, if I'm being completely straight with you. He had a 1,000-yard season. He had 7 touchdowns. And people were just like, oh, Tennessee's terrible. I mean, Tennessee wasn't great, but Tennessee is not going to be run heavy anymore. I mean, we have a new offensive. We have Brian Callahan, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals and helped develop Joe Burrow, who's now there with Will Levis, who Will Levis throws a great deep ball. I mean, sure, I guess Hopkins is competing with Tyler Boyd and Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley. But for my money, I would still say that DeAndre Hopkins is the number 1 receiver. For my money, I still say he's the most talented player of all those players I just named. And he does the thing that Levis does the best. So, I mean, he's older now. He's 32. But I don't think he's going to get like 100 catches like he used to like 5 years ago, but he's still an incredible player. I still think he's at least he's a wide receiver too, going for $4. Like, Mac paid $35 for Mike Evans, right? Mike Evans had a great season. He had 1,255 yards and 13 touchdowns. All right, so he was the top. Yeah, he was a top 7 receiver last year. DeAndre Hopkins was a top 20 receiver in a bad offense. Got 1,057, so a little less than like 200. So about like 198 yards less and 6 touchdowns less because Evans got 13 touchdowns. But like, Evans went for 35 and Hopkins went for 4. Like that. What? So I guess people just avoid him because Tennessee, and I can understand that somewhat, but this is where you kind of gotta like do the research, or at least if you don't know the research, at least know the name. Like, yeah, Tennessee, don't really know what to make of them. Not really sure what the offense will look like. Yes, there's a lot of mouths to feed. But I mean, for $4, you should make that bet all day. Like, Hopkins is still the number 1 receiver. So we'll go low. We'll say he gets less targets than he got last year because there's so many mouths to feed. We'll say like 900 yards, 5 touchdowns. But I'm still just kind of like, he has a possibility of another 1,000-yard year, and he's going to probably be like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver type. And $4, like, that's crazy good deal. It's a crazy good deal to be able to plug that into your lineup. See, like he's like your number 2, like, wide receiver. And I don't get why people didn't bid on him. Like, it's the best deal I've seen so far of any of these players. Like, that's wild. Jeez. I don't know what I was doing, man. I don't know what I was doing. I think I was waiting on quarterback and trying to save some money so I could go get a quarterback because I was afraid I'd get bid up. And I wish I had emptied some of that money into getting Hopkins. Dog, that was just, ugh. So we then took Jackson Smith and Jigba. Okay, I got it. Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was the number one pick for Seattle last year. He's playing in the slot. We're hoping for like a breakthrough season now, overtaking Tyler Lockett. I mean, he looked good. He's only 22. I know Lockett and Noah Fant are returning, but I'm also hoping with the new Seahawks, like we finally got rid of Pete Carroll. We're finally starting to open it up. Funny enough, what is it? The University of Washington. Yeah, they went to the college football championship game last year. They lost, obviously, but their offensive coordinator was a guy by the name of Ryan Grubb. So Grubb followed Kalen DeBoer, who got hired as the Alabama head coach after Nick Saban retired. But then Mike McDonald was taken as he was the defense coordinator for the Ravens. He was sniped by Seattle to be the new head coach once they had Pete Carroll retire, and he took Ryan Grubb to be his offensive coordinator with the Seahawks. What does that all matter? Well, Grubb worked wonders with Michael Penix. Okay, people don't understand the same way like Jaden Daniels was like a 4th or 5th round. We'll give Daniels the benefit of the doubt. Going into last year, I had Jaden Daniels as a 5th round pick. Going into last year, I had Michael Penix as an undrafted free agent quarterback. All right, that guy went 8 overall. How did that happen? Because Ryan Grubb was there to make that happen. All right, Ryan Grubb turned Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan. All those guys went in the first 3 rounds, all really good wide receivers, went in the first 3 rounds of this past NFL draft with Michael Penix Jr., all of them. He even had Troy Fontu, who was the left tackle, got drafted by Pittsburgh in the first round too. That is all Ryan Grubb, to get a general idea of how good Ryan Grubb is. So the fact that the Seahawks were able to get this guy, Ryan Grubb, who loves to spread it out, is really, really interesting. Now, the offensive line is still not that great. Classic Pete Carroll doesn't invest in offensive line. So it's still the least expensive offensive line in football. Still not that great. But, I mean, it was just 2 years ago we saw breakthrough season from Geno Smith. And Geno Smith wasn't that bad last year. He was merely good. He wasn't, the year before he was, we won't say excellent, but he was very good. Last year he was just merely good. So, I'm feeling like Ryan Grubb, Smith-Njigba is the perfect fit for that. I'm feeling like him changing this offense into a high-flying, 3-wide, throw it all over the yard offense is very good for Smith-Njigba. I'm feeling like Smith-Njigba will probably take over Tyler Lockett and see more opportunities. So, the same way we just talked up DeAndre Hopkins, I'm putting Smith-Njigba around that same 900 yards, 5 or 6 touchdowns, was a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 level player, and we're getting him at a huge monster discount of $2 after we got DeAndre Hopkins for $4. And this is part of the reason why people are spending like 14, like what is it? I mean, this is why, what was it? Sarah was spending like 14 on DJ Moore, 16 on Brandon Ayuk, $9 on Zay Flowers. And I like those players. Those are good players. Those are good deals. These are excellent deals. These are like we go to, we're thinking we're shopping in Walmart, and all of a sudden we've secretly found like the Trader Joe's aisle. Like that is what this is. So it is very, very interesting to me that Patrick is the one pulling this. I suppose, I mean, it's late in the draft. No one was really paying attention. You did not have a lot of waiver money to use though. And you're filling starting level slots on your team. I mean, I wish I got these players at these prices. Like, I got stuck with guys like Joshua Palmer for like $3. I paid more for Joshua Palmer than you paid for Smith-Njigba, and I got Smith-Njigba as the way better player. And it's just, that kind of stuff infuriates me. So, great pick. 2 really excellent, incredible selections. I don't know how you pulled that off. I'm just baffled by it. But yeah, Good on you. All right, so 118, $1. Good old Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, he was having his best season of his career last year. And then he tore his Achilles. He tore his Achilles in like week 8. I think, gosh, he was a top 8, 7 fantasy quarterback last year. And he had 18 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He threw for over 2,300 yards in was there bye? Yeah, in basically 8 games, and then he got hurt. So, that's really good. He was probably going to lead the league in passing. It was that good. Now he gets to go to a team. People don't like Atlanta. People don't understand. If Zach Robinson, I'm not going to give it to Raheem Morris. So if Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, can actually figure this out, can actually use Atlanta's playmakers properly, Bijan Robinson, for my money, is the most talented running back in football. All right, Kyle Pitts is probably the most talented tight end in football, but they have him block all the time because they're stupid. Don't draft him that high if you're not going to use him. Drake London is a very talented wide receiver. I'm not going to say he's the most talented, but he's a very talented wide receiver. They even brought in Darnell Mooney to be the number 2 wide receiver. He's got tons of speed. And they have probably a top 3 offensive line. Was it? I forget his name. But Chris Lindstrom, it just got $100 million. He might be the best guard in football. That dude is freaking legit. So, specifically the offensive line being that dominant and them still not being able to figure this out is just baffling. Atlanta has more talent than the Dallas Cowboys have on offense. And Atlanta won 7 games. That just doesn't... that don't make no sense. So, if they could actually put it together, they're a 12-win team. I don't know if it's going to be like that. I don't really have that kind of faith in Raheem Morris being able to do that with the defense, despite now trading for Matthew Judon. They still need more pass rushers. But that's really their biggest weakness. There's no weaknesses on offense. If Kirk Cousins does what Kirk Cousins does, this is a playoff team. So, getting him for $1 is great. My issue is we're very Atlanta heavy now. I mean, we got Bijan, we got Tyler Algier. That's fine. Algier is the handcuff. But also later in this draft, we take Kyle Pitts too. And so it's kind of the only guy we're really missing is Drake London at that point. Even if I like Atlanta, even if I think Atlanta will be good and improved, I don't want that much of one team. That's a lot. So, even though I think Cousins will have a bounce-back season, and even though I think this was a good deal, and even though I think Atlanta's on the come-up, I would seriously consider getting a different quarterback. Just because I don't like being that tied to, an offense. If I'm starting 3 offensive players on the same team, that's a lot. That's a lot of players. I don't even like starting 2 players on the same team. And I currently violated my own rule, and I have a running back and a pass catcher, a tight end, on my own team. And I was foolish, and I did it. I got a great deal. I couldn't turn it up, but I did it. But 3 is a lot. 3 is too much. I don't know if I would pick Justin Herbert with everything going on in with the Chargers. I would maybe consider someone else. But, maybe Geno, maybe Baker Mayfield. Somebody. There's got to be somebody, because I ain't doing 3. There's just too much. If they go down in flames, you're dead. So, nah. I like the pick, but I'd get rid of him and pick another quarterback. $3, 127, Austin Eckler. Okay. Don't know why we're missing Gibson, Antonio Gibson. Maybe you ought to have considered getting him as the handcuff. But funny enough, this is Gibson's replacement with Washington. Now, we all know Austin Eckler. We all know Austin Eckler has been a tremendous fantasy asset. He was, he helped Brian. He was a top 5 running back that year. He helped Brian win his championship. But, he scored 38 touchdowns in 2021 and 2022 combined, and then last year was kind of like the precipitous fall. He had a high ankle sprain in week 1, and then it just kind of, like, he didn't come back to week 6, and it just kind of wasn't ever the same. He was just kind of, it was gone. Now, it takes a while to get over high ankle sprains, so your hope is he can have a bounce back season. But the fact that he had such a hard time on free agency is very telling. The fact that Robbie spent $29 on Brian Robinson Jr., and I think their projections are around the same, and you got freaking Austin Eckler for $3 is pretty wild. I think he'll get a bounce back season just because the high ankle sprain. I think because he's older, it'd actually help him having to share the load with someone. But I think he'll be like a 50-50 backfield, which in this case is helpful because he's going to get the receiving work. So I think he'll get like 650 yards rushing, but I think he'll get like another 400 yards receiving. So he'll get his 1,000 yards. He'll get his like 6 touchdowns. And for that, well, that, my friends, is a starting running back in our league. So, yeah, good on you for getting a $3 starting running back. That is fun. 128, so the very next pick, $3, Kyle Pitts. I mean, we're going super Atlanta heavy. He's been like the most frustrating player the last 3 years because Arthur Smith didn't know what the hell to do with him. I think he's only caught like 149 passes, so basically 50 passes a season all 3 years. Hopefully, Zach Robinson knows how to use him. Hopefully, we actually get like a 60 to 70 catch season from Kyle Pitts. Hopefully, we stop using him as a blocker all the time and actually have him run routes and not just like pretend like we drafted a cat at number 4 overall and just to watch him block people and then run routes. Like, if you want to draft an offensive tackle that high, that makes sense. But occasionally blocking people, occasionally running routes, no. I need you to be one of two things. You need to do one or the other, or you need to do both excellently and efficiently. And he's not a blocker. He doesn't do that. So, yeah, I'm happy Arthur Smith is gone from Atlanta. I am sad he's in Pittsburgh because God only knows I'm going to have to deal with Cordell Patterson getting goal line touches and freaking Darrell Washington taking passes while Pat Freiermuth blocks. That's what I'm in for, and I'm just like, ugh. So, anyway, Pitts was still the 13th best fantasy tight end last year. I mean, if they could actually do things properly, he could be a top 3 fantasy tight end. What does that mean? He's like a top 30 receiver. I'll make that simple. He's a top 30, 35 receiver at that case. So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind the bet because we think Atlanta's on the come up. $3 all day deal. 129, $3, Jerry Jeudy, who got traded to Cleveland. There's something, I read something that was a very strange but true, like, statement about that. I know Jerry Jeudy was the highest drafted receiver that year. I mean, he was drafted in the same season as, like, Henry Ruggs. Yeah, so he was the 15th overall pick in the 2020 draft. Why do I bring that up? Because that is a very particular wide receiver draft. Yeah, so he was 2 picks before CeeDee Lamb. He was, let's see, 7 picks before Justin Jefferson. 10 picks before Brandon Ayuk. And 18 picks before T. Higgins. 19 picks before Michael Pittman. So the only other guy in that draft that really failed basically was, obviously Henry Ruggs, who was, I guess, was the highest drafted receiver at 12, and Judy was 15. And then Jalen Reagor, who also went at 21 right before Justin Jefferson. But that just gives you an idea of how highly thought of Jerry Jeudy was. Like, he was the number 2 draft receiver in that draft class. And every guy just named, again, other than Jalen Reagor and now Henry Ruggs, basically is an elite wide receiver. And if Henry Ruggs didn't have his off-field stuff, he'd probably be an elite wide receiver too. So really the only guy who kind of failed is Jalen Reagor in not so simple terms. But I digress. The point is, Jeudy had a lot of talent once upon a time. Denver has given up on him. They dumped him in Cleveland. Cleveland gave him an extension, which was very surprising. He struggles with drops. He only had like 9 fantasy points a game last year. He's competing with Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and Elijah Moore for touches. I don't really believe in Deshaun Watson, which is the biggest problem with this. Unfortunately, I think the problem is Kevin Stefanski is a West Coast Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay kind of guy, and that's not what Watson does. Watson is a shotgun-heavy, almost like Peyton Manning, Bruce Arians, Tom Moore kind of offense, an air raid offense. He doesn't fit what the West Coast they're trying to do, and that's why they've not been very good with Watson, frankly. So, if Cleveland turns it around, I think Judy's really talented, is what I'm saying. I don't mind it just to kind of see, but it's just kind of, we've been waiting a while and it still hasn't come. He's basically a top 50-ish receiver. We'll see. 142, $2. Rome Odunze. What do we know about Rome Odunze? Well, I like Rome Odunze. He was the number 9 pick in the draft this year. So the second first-round pick for Chicago after taking quarterback Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. I think that Odunze is, for my money, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best. Malik Neighbors is right there. Odunze in his own right is a very, very good receiver. He's like, 6'3", 212, runs a 4.5 40. He was the best receiver at Washington. He's just big, he's strong, he's fast. So, yeah, he had 92 catches, 1,640 yards, and 13 touchdowns last season. Just crazy video game numbers. He has the chance, the upside to be a star receiver in this league. The problem is he's going to be having a rookie quarterback with an okay offensive line competing for touches with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask of a kid. So there's a lot of things basically going against him being the guy. I think he'll get 800 yards. I think he'll get 6 touchdowns. I think he'll get 60 receptions. But on the off chance he becomes the number 1 or number 2, we're talking big upside. And I don't mind the swing this late in the draft. He's a really, really talented player. He's just got a lot of competition. And not bad competition. Very good competition. It's like the opposite of Malik Neighbors, where there's nobody, but I'm worried about the quarterback. I'm not as worried about Caleb Williams, despite him being a rookie. I'm just worried about Odunze being able to get time. Getting touches. So, last pick, 185, Ty Chandler. He is now the backup to Aaron Jones with the Vikings. He's still at the Vikings. He's nothing more than a handcuff to Aaron Jones. Now, Aaron Jones has been off injured. I would know. I had him last year. So, but even when Cam Akers was out last season, and they had gotten rid of Dalvin Cook, and everything was kind of going haywire with Alexander Madison in Minnesota, Ty Chandler still wasn't a very good fantasy running back. So, I think he'll be his usual backup handcuff role. I think he's basically a guy, not the guy. And if something happens to Aaron Jones, he'll just be okay. I mean, I wouldn't mind trading him to Andre, but the problem is Andre doesn't really have anything to trade right now. Anyway, I'm thinking 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. If something happens to Jones, he'll get touches and be a running back, and a running back with a pulse is worth something. Okay, that's a lot. What do we think? I say as I sit in this tiny house while I watch a frog climb up the window. Wow, that guy is some kind of level of sticky. Well, being honest, I think this is a good draft. I like this team a lot. I wonder about the quarterback, but quarterback we can figure out. I think this team's a playoff team. I really like the upside. I really like some of the deals we got on the back end. I really like the depth. This is a really good team. I'm going to say I probably have it. I got to think about this. Okay, where do I have in my ranks? So, we'll kind of put it this way. I think my number 1 team is probably Leyland. I think my number 2 team is probably... that's tough. We'll say Ryan. My number 3 team is probably Stefan. My number 4 team is probably Justin. And then I'm going to actually push back Mackenzie and Sarah to 7 and 8 because I think I might have someone else in mind, and I'm going to place Patrick at 6. I like Patrick's team more than Mac and Sarah's. I don't know if I like it as much as Justin's. Well, you know what? I might flip-flop that. Hold on. Let me look at something. This is tough. I really like. I can't do it. All right. We're keeping 4 alone. We're putting Justin at 5. We're putting Patrick at 6. Mac at 7. Sarah at 8. That's where I got it. That's what I have. You want to argue with me? That's fine. That's just what I think. This team is good. It's not like very good like some of the other teams in our league, but it's good. Everywhere you look in that starting lineup is a talented player. You go to the bench to find someone helpful, and he can just plug in basically anyone on the bench to start. If he could just figure out a way to get Antonio Gibson, I think he'd basically just be like set. So this team's really, really good. I'm gonna give you a B, but there's not a whole lot I would change, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have spent as much money on like Jamar Chase, but it worked out for you, so I can't really argue that. I mean, hell, I spent $57 on A.J. Brown, and I spent $66 on Derrick Henry. You spent $80 on Bijan Robinson, and then you spent $57 on Jamar Chase. You spent more money than me on 2 better players, and frankly, your team is better than mine by quite a bit. So, yeah, this is a good team, Patrick. You just navigate the regular season. You'll get in the playoffs, kind of do your thing. We'll see. I mean, getting in the playoffs half the battle. Once you get there, anything can happen. But man, the scary thing is, if Bijan Robinson and Jamar Chase just kind of hit their ceilings, you're just gonna be like a super powerful, like kind of like Ryan's team where things just go bananas. Like Ryan has more ceiling than you, but you're maybe just right behind him in ceiling, and that's really, really scary. And I bring up ceiling because every year we have 2 or 3 teams that hit ceilings, and those are the teams that usually win championships. So your team just has one of those teams where I'm just like, man, that team's really freaking good. Yeah. It's really even with a lot of these teams, though, guys. So please don't be like, oh, man, there's a big, big difference. There's not a big difference. It's personal preference. I mean, hell, last year I picked Justin as my favorite team. I thought he was the best team. I thought he had the best draft. He didn't make the playoffs. So, I can be wrong. It is okay. So, I really like this team, though, man. Ugh. Gosh, I would trade for this team. Okay, that's what I got. I'm tired. It's after midnight. I gotta wake up. So, you're only getting one video tonight. Sorry, guys, but there you go. Good job, Patrick. Keep it up.